It hasn't been, just to answer your question. Alan LaForce won 24 games back-to-back years back in the 90s. But no, even the great Mr. teams did not win that many games in a season and all this mid-major madnesses, SoCon, John Hooper. But I know ETSU has one starter returning and all this. What I did see is one of your co-writers actually released a far too early mid-major poll. Nevada number 1, not surprising. The Zags, Gonzaga number 2, that's not surprising either. But there were only 2 SoCon teams, and UNCG, Wofford, no ETSU. Do you think that's right? I mean, I would have thought, just as you had written, that Steve Forbes has given ETSU that sort of free pass to the mid-major preseason top 25, but then again, there are about 200-odd, mid-major teams. What did you think about that? Do you think that that's about right? ETSU is number 3 in the SoCon?
Yeah, I think so. To go into the season, I wouldn't be sure. I would probably have them ranked in the top 25 in my poll, somewhere from the 18 to 25 range. I think with what UNCG showed against, if Gonzaga truly is the number 1 team in the country for mid-major basketball, then and they had them on the ropes last year in the first round of the NCAA tournament with 3 starters back, I would have UNCG probably in the top 10, top 7, something like that. Offered somewhere around 11 to 15. I mean, they did beat North Carolina last year, and they gave UNCG all they wanted before losing by 1 point in the Southern Conference semifinals. Really gave them the best game of the tournament. So, I mean, I think the SoCon's strong enough to have 3 in the conversation, certainly. I think a lot of people, and I'm the first to say that I was guilty of this last year, is not really knowing how you replace so many starters to surround the guys you have coming back with players. And that's another reason that prompted me to write the article, was the fact that you're turning over a roster every 1 or 2 years because of junior college guys and incoming Division I transfers that may not have worked out at their previous locations, usually from a Power 5 school. So one of the things that's interesting about Coach Forbes is that he is able to blend that talent, and he's a good enough talent assessor to bring in talent to surround the guys, the veterans he has back, like Bo Hodges and Laden Armas. So we've seen that happen, I guess, twice now, and so I wasn't about to make the mistake of, underrating ETSU for a 3rd season in a row. But in my defense, I didn't realize that he was that good at doing what he's been able to do in his first 3 years as head coach, and be able to blend that talent together, because that's not an easy thing to do. There's different ways. I've always said this about going about coaching, and that's one of the tougher things to do, is to blend a guy in for 2, 2, maybe 3 years, and then have to turn over pretty much a whole roster, and then do it again with 1 or 2, 3 main guys returning.
Do you think that Steve Forbes, or for that matter ETSU, has not received enough criticism for their, let's face facts, 2 collapses last year, losing their last 3 down the stretch, all at home, the Citadel, for crying out loud, and that cost ETSU the regular season crown and a chance to play in the NITs, and then for that matter, it's a tie game, SoCon final against UNCG. And Steve Forbes has told me, look, we let Jordy Kuiper and said, have Jordy Kuiper beat us with 3 points. That was by design. You'd rather have Kuiper attempt that 3-point shot than Francis Alonso, obviously. But he made them. So what can you say? And the thing was, it wasn't a 6-point loss. It was a 15-point loss at the end of the SoCon final. It wasn't close. Do you think that ETSU has not received enough criticism for basically throwing away a Southern Conference championship perhaps twice last year?
Well, it's tough I think the thing that hurt, for me anyway, this is just my opinion, but like the thing that hurt them at the end of the season, and it should have played, a lot of people would look at say, oh, for the home games, we got this thing wrapped up now because, I think that actually kind of hurt them. I think they needed a road game in between those three home games at the end of the season. For some reason, it just, I think you have a sense of, okay, we'll get it done tonight. We may not win we may not have beaten the Citadel, but we're going to get it done against, so-and-so, or we'll beat Furman on the final day of the week. And I think it kind of puts a seed of, if we don't play well this game, we can just do it, the next time out because we're playing at home. And I think that actually hurt them, down the stretch, and that's something I think maybe that's out of the control of, obviously, Coach Forbes. In the tournament, you got, 4 guys for UNCG that are pretty good perimeter shooters, with the only exception being James Dickey inside. So, I guess you could say those 2 threes to start the second half were sort of daggers with the way UNCG plays defense because, that's 6 points, but it almost seems like 16 points.
Yeah, it really did.
And I think
changed the whole game.
Right, and I guess you could criticize that point, and maybe there's probably not enough criticism for that I guess the juncture of the game. But as a whole for the season, I think ETSU probably maybe not. I think when their fans, when they got to the championship, their fans just assumed that they would win it. But from the media and the outside looking in, I would say they exceeded some of the expectations that at least I had, for them going into the season. And I would think, while they were in the championship and the 17-game winning streak, I think that was a bit unexpected. But then when they started winning the games they did, almost expected them to go ahead and win the Southern Conference tournament. So in that way, I guess it was unexpected that they would lose in the fashion they did to UNCG. But having said that, I think that if you look at the season as a whole, I think that was a success. I can't really criticize, where they win 25 games or whatever.
I understand that. I guess I look at it as sort of like where does ETSU go from here? Because it did look like it was a team that could return to the NCAAs, or certainly at least have the legitimate consolation of an NIT. We can discuss maybe if that is legitimate or not, but it's certainly more than, say, the CBI or something like that. And
I don't blame Coach Forbes for not going to a tournament.
No, I don't either. I don't either. If you're not getting the NIT bid, I wouldn't have gone either, to be brutally honest with you. I remember some of the times when under Murray Bartow they went in, and it really, I thought, made the Bucks look bad because, Bartow would do interviews on Wednesday saying, well, I don't know if we'd accept them or not. And then as it turns out, the athletic department is paying for home games in those tournaments. Now, that's total miscommunication right there, but that was ETSU athletics, prior to Sanders and Nolan and Forbes and all those guys and all that, and there still may be some disarray with football. I know I'm focusing in on basketball here, but there are some questions here that I do want to ask you, John Hooper. John, the question that I want to ask in terms of basketball, how come Wofford can get North Carolina to come to their home court, but ETSU has to settle for Chicago State?
Well, that's a good question. From what I've heard, there's several reasons why North Carolina is going to Wofford. One of them being that they thought they were going to get Zion Williamson out of Spartanburg. So this would have been his first year at North Carolina. And that would have been back in his hometown, playing in front of home folks, there at Wofford. So that was one of the reasons. The other reason is I think they wanted to do it last year because North Carolina is, and at least with North Carolina schools, I know this to be true, they go in and they help members of their North Carolina system or not, or just schools in the state, really open up their arenas. I remember back in 2000, I guess it was Appalachian State, and a few years after that, UNC Asheville at Kimmel Arena.
Yeah, I
seem to recall. Elon this year, who's got the new, I guess, Shar Center on campus. So it's very nice, and I know they're opening Elon's new home gym, and I believe the Wofford game is right after that, or vice versa. And so they've been good about doing that, but I know that the loss obviously last year was a little bit unexpected for North Carolina, so they might have wanted to rethink that decision. But I think I heard that they couldn't work out to where North Carolina could actually open Wofford's gym last year, so that's why that it was a one game last year at North Carolina, and then this year was obviously it's going to be at Wofford. So that's what I heard. But I think there is some more of legs to the Zion Williamson aspect of it. I think that they really thought they were going to get him, and that would be kind of a return for him, since he was only, obviously, most people do that for their seniors, but Zion Williamson's probably only going to stay 1 year in college. So.
Well, I got to get on Steve Forbes and see if he can't schedule Georgetown down here then next year. So that's the case with that. Anyway, I will Mac Miller, if you're not familiar with him, and all this. Anyhow, let me then ask this final question. That you like Duggar Bogham. Before you wrote about Steve Forbes, John Hooper, you wrote about Duggar. And, we were talking about the collapse of ETSU last year. Well, what about Duggar? I mean, do you think this is the year that he can actually have a winning record at the Citadel? I know he got away from some of that up-tempo style he used to play, but did come up with a big victory against the Bucks last year. Is he on the hot seat, or is he just about ready to get hot?
No, I think he's just about ready to get hot. Duggar's one of the most pleasurable interviews you'll ever do, because that guy can tell stories. He's sort of, in a lot of ways, like Steve Forbes, very, very serious, but at the same time, very self-deprecating to a certain degree. And I like that about, he's confident enough in what he does to actually criticize himself sometimes. And so that makes it kind of neat to interview him. But I really do think so. I mean, I think they play such a unique style of basketball, and I say more that you hear coaches around the league talk about how they play defensively and how they'll switch, one or two times within a possession, their defense, and just kind of throw some jump defenses at you, and it makes it real difficult. Now, if you look at their stats, that won't validate what I'm saying, but I think it sometimes confuses other teams and gets them into a run-and-gun game with the Citadel, and they don't even realize they're doing it when they've probably been coached not to try and get into that helter-skelter type of basketball game with the Bulldogs. And with the way they shoot the basketball with Frierson and the way Zane Najd-Dowie can step out and hit three, they're versatile. And I would say that they'll contend for an upper echelon finish in the Southern Conference this season.
Now, let me talk a little bit about, let's move to football here. Upper echelon for the Citadel. You heard it from SoCon John Hooper, though. Let's focus on that, okay? But now let's focus on football. Boy, I'm saying focus a lot, aren't I, SoCon John Hooper? This was a very interesting weekend because a lot of unexpected in the SoCon. You went into this week thinking, okay, Furman, Samford, they're the favorites, that sort of thing. But now all of a sudden you look up and, wait a minute, Furman's, they're 0-2. Samford, who just almost beat Florida State, now we learn Florida State stinks, and they lose to Mercer. Wofford gives Wyoming all they can handle out in Laramie, despite the scholarship difference. And Chattanooga is now 3-0. Who's the team to beat? Before we get to ETSU VMI, who's the team to beat in the SoCon this year?
Well, I mean, if you were judging after 3 weeks, I think you would have to say Wofford Mercer, who was a dark horse pick of mine, it looked like the best teams, but you wouldn't have said that when Mercer was down 56-0 at halftime against Memphis in the opener. So it's been really crazy a couple of weeks. I think Chattanooga's been the most consistent so far. When you look at it, they've gone on the road twice and won. I know UT Martin was undefeated, but I think they had not won a game, but they had played two FBS foes coming in and didn't play too bad against Middle Tennessee State, even though they gave up 60-some-odd points. But I think you look at Chattanooga from a consistency standpoint, they've been pretty good because they've gone on the road twice, and one of those is a conference game at the Citadel, which is never easy to come out of there with a victory. It's one of the tougher places to play in the SoCon. And so and then you look at what Wofford's done. Obviously, squeaked out a win over the Citadel in the opener, where they got out to a huge, I think, 21-0 lead and really held on at the end on a fourth down pass that was incomplete from George Black in the back of the end zone. So they beat the Citadel, and then they expected to beat VMI, I'm sure, 59-14. So, and then they went out to Wyoming, and quite honestly, they get an interception from Weston Roundtree with about, I think, 7 minutes left, and you think they're going to win the game because they're up, 14-10 or something, if they can just hold on to the ball. Wyoming ends up getting it back and scoring with 17 seconds left. So just a real heartbreaker for them because, Wyoming was a team coming off of a bowl victory last year over Central Michigan, I think in the famous Idaho Bowl or something. So, and they were a team that was 8-5 last year.
One of the bowl games that really ought to be eliminated, to be honest with you. That let's get back to where we just have conference champions making bowl games, and there you go. Come on, let's make it mean something. That sort of thing. But anyway, no. But right now you're talking about this, and it seems to me that you kind of like Wofford maybe now as that team to beat and such in the SoCon, even though I know a lot of people were high on Samford. And for that matter, they only lost by 6 points to Mercer, and it's not like Mercer's chopped liver. It's just that,
Here's the thing, though. They played a Division II game, and you have to have 7 Division I's to be eligible for the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
So that means they have to win 7 of their last 8 games to be eligible.
Intriguing. Pressure on the Bulldogs there. Next thing, Furman comes in. Furman comes in at 0 and Furman comes in at 0-2. Is this a beatable team for ETSU, which has not been playing well? But is Furman a beatable team?
Yes, I think so, because until Furman in their first 2 games, and anytime you break in a 2 freshman quarterbacks, you're going to take some lumps. I don't care how good your offensive line is or what school, what program you are. So unless you're getting 5-star guys like Clemson with Trevor Lawrence, you're going to have struggle breaking in freshman quarterback, especially running the type of offense Furman does. So yes, it's a very winnable game for East Tennessee State. I think the MO now is to try and force Furman to throw to beat you. And that's what Elon did very successfully a couple weeks ago at Rhodes Stadium. And Furman, it's not that their quarterbacks were, they just weren't getting the kind of time that, they would normally, they got last year as far as throwing the football, and that's because they lose 2 all-conference linemen and the Jacobs blocking award winner and Matthew Schmidt. So I think that had a lot to do with the struggles on the offensive side of the ball in the first 2 games. Defensively, it was where it's more surprising because Furman returned 9 of 11 starters from last year's unit, and there's really not much of an excuse as to why they were, not able to limit Elon the way, more in that football game. I think they actually played better defensively against Clemson in the opener.
Anyway, so that you do think it's beatable, but I got to ask this. If you were Randy Sanders right now, would you make a quarterback switch? And I got to ask a yes/no right now because I'm right up against it. Yes or no?
Well, yeah. I give him another quarter against Furman and see what happens.
All right. I actually am not that down on March. The thing about him is I think that he's throwing potentially FBS fastballs to FCS receivers who are used to catching a lefty's ball, and he's got a righty's ball. And I mean, you look at the interceptions against Tennessee, they were tip passes. They were the fault, I thought, of the wide receiver, not necessarily the quarterback, and that was also a problem against the Mars Hill Lions to kick things off with. All right, it's SoCon John Hooper. We've got a lot of NFL action. We've got a lot of college football action to talk about in the last half hour. It's Tri-City Sports Now.
A musical